Good morning, friends of the channel. When my good friend Roberto, the carpenter, goes to people's homes to perform some repair work, sometimes he's there to fix windows or even sturdy doors and frequently comes across pieces just like this one. He doesn't even consider attempting to fix them because he sees them as beyond any practical repair, at least as far as restoration. But he always thinks of me and brings them to me, saying, "Look, Elisa, they were going to throw this away. It was under the beam, under the so-called trava, in Piedmontese, that means a rustic porch, and they were going to get rid of it. So I brought it to you." And I always thank him, because sometimes he brings me gems. And even though this piece of furniture is truly a disaster, a real and absolute disaster to most people's eyes, to me it's absolutely beautiful. It has undeniable potential. Why? Because it's low, perfect for a TV. There used to be a drawer here, which was rotten, so I removed it, because I want to put a shelf in and make it perfect, with a hole at the back to fit the PlayStation's decoder, or whatever you like. And it's a beautiful piece of furniture to put in a living room, with features that are finally lovely, soft, elegant, not like those modern living room units, which are just squared off rectangles, completely lacking in personality. So, thank you, Roberto, and let's get started. Let's start by removing the veneer that's coming off. Now, I'm lucky enough to have a really good heat gun, which will help me with this job. If you don't have one, no problem. Just use a hairdryer, but make sure it's as hot as possible. Why do we use a heat gun? Because it gently loosens the old glue that was under the veneer, so you absolutely don't end up pulling off and potentially damaging the layer underneath. I carefully heat it up. My heat gun reaches about 400 degrees. I'm starting right here because it's easier for me since I already have the spatula and the veneer in position. As you can see, as I go over it with the heat gun, everything underneath comes off easily. Just look. Don't use force. Don't just try to pull it up with the spatula. Simply because you'll end up with a very damaged surface underneath. Instead, as you can see, this way the underlying surface stays intact. I pick a precise spot, then heat it up and gently insert the spatula, make an opening, and then carry on with the process. This piece of furniture probably ended up like this because it took on a lot of water at the top. And we're going to make it beautiful again. Now I'll carry on with the whole piece, and I'll definitely use the same method on the drawers, which are in a really bad state. I've removed all the veneer with my spatula and the heat gun. Now I'll use sandpaper. I've got 80 grit on the sander, and I'm smoothing out the whole surface. For this lovely piece, we've chosen to use London Fumé, a beautiful color I haven't shown you in quite a while. Actually, the primary choice of color fell on this particular shade because the exquisite paper I've chosen, which I love, has a bit of this tone in its beautiful designs. So I thought, why not? Let's make this lovely furniture become a beautiful frame for this paper. So I'm going to put some London Fumé into this tray. I'm adding quite a bit because I want to cover everything and do 2 coats. Careful now, because I'm also adding a little drop of Satin protective coating. This one's already open and ready to use, 3 spoonfuls, and then I'll finish it all off by adding some textured powder. Why do I add the textured powder? Magic star. Because it will help me thicken it, make it even thicker and heavier, so I'll be able to cover up a lot of the imperfections on this piece of furniture, which unfortunately isn't in the best condition. Now I'm adding 3 spoonfuls. I'll mix it, see if that's enough, and then decide if I need to add more or not. Now we'll split up. You take the brush, I'll take the roller. You like the architecture anyway, don't you? So, I'm loading up my medium pile roller. You know our microfiber rollers are fantastic. They come in 3 types: shorter, medium, and longer pile, even for really rough surfaces and walls. Why do I use it? Because I want to get a textured finish on the base, but above all, because I want to cover quickly and hide any flaws. Look. As you can see, the final effect is a very distinctive stippled texture. We'll do the first coat like this all over, and then the second coat will be even more textured, so the finish will be really unique. The coverage is incredible, but even so, we'll still do 2 coats. I've started applying the second coat everywhere, just like before, nice and textured. I began with the roller, and then I'll see if I want to emphasize the texture even more in other ways, perhaps with a brush or a sponge. This is an old recycled top, which I cut to size because there used to be an old drawer here. We cut it to size, didn't we, Emma? We did a really good job rounding it off too. You and Franco did a great job rounding it off. And now we will put a little bit of glue here on the upright sections without overdoing it at all, and also here on the front part. I am not putting on very much, because you never know, maybe one day in the future someone will want to put a drawer back. Now I will gently lower the top and then put some weights on it. Here I've got just what I need, my drawers of screws, 1 and 2. This is an amazing glue, because it sets really quickly and sticks all sorts of materials, so I think in 10 minutes it'll be spot on. There's no point firing nails or doing anything else, since it's just a very delicate support surface. Now, watch how we create an even more textured surface where it's needed. A sponge, a C1 or Molly, whichever you prefer. A little tool that looks like a trowel. There's also the fratak. I take the color, always thickened with magic star powder, and while I dab it on, Emma dries it with the hairdryer. Let's go. As you can see, the surface that's created is even more textured, like a real concrete wall. I carry on over all the surfaces. I've decided to add some shading with a bit of pickling. Why am I talking about shading? Because I don't want to pickle too much. I don't want to bring out the texture and the pattern too strongly, but above all, I don't want too many background colors to show through, as they're a bit mixed. Some areas are lighter, others darker, and in places there's black from old paint. But I want to give it an aged look because with the wallpaper I've chosen, it will look great. Underneath, I'm using 100 grit sandpaper, but it's old because I want to pickle, but not too much. I've connected it to my sander and to the vacuum so I won't make dust, and I'm ready to start. We're already in position because we're going to put this exceptional wallpaper, at least in my opinion, on this piece of furniture. I've always been a bit unconventional because no one here wanted it. But I like it. I like it, and I'm sure it will give a very feminine touch to this piece of furniture. It's an extremely feminine paper, created by a very unique, very famous architect. His name is Giles Deacon, he's French. Sanderson created a collection for him, following his designs. Shall we show the collection? I really like it a lot. Actually, I also really love the black version, but I chose this one, the champagne color. I like it very much. There's also the same version in ivory. And the whole collection he created along these lines is very French, very feminine, very distinctive. Look here, it's even more striking because here there are quail eggs, all colorful. And here he's even matched them to his curtains, which are coordinated with the wallpaper featuring a chicken wire pattern. So in fact, he's someone very peculiar and unique. Here again, we find a bucolic scene with the eggs, with roses and its pearly. The same pattern in blue, or with the addition of some animals. It really is an interesting catalogue and anything but ordinary. The further we go, the more unusual things we find. For example, further on, there are even tarot cards and playing cards, until reaching a very fancy, shabby look with these roses. Enough chit-chat. Let's carry on and start applying our beautiful paper to the drawers. We were careful. Let's show it first. Look how beautiful it is. We made sure to clamp the two drawers together because we want the pattern to match up perfectly, even when they're separated later on. Don't worry, I'm saying this because in some videos you've told me off, but you really need to watch all the tutorials to understand. There are wormholes from woodworms, but the woodworms themselves aren't there. We always treat the furniture with woodworm repellent before we start using it for tutorials or anything else, of course. And it's in our best interest, since we then put them on display with other pieces of furniture. So it wouldn't be very considerate of us to put up furniture with woodworms, but the holes remain. There are times when the woodworm holes don't bother me, like here. I don't care at all because they'll be underneath. But even in other spots, I actually need them because when I do the pickling, it blends with this slightly, let's say, antiqued finish. Now, on this side, right, Emma. We let the paper gently fall down, and this will be the applied paper. I really like it because you can clearly see the bow, both flowers, and even the bee. In this recycled Jasmine Wax jar, because nothing is thrown away, I had some leftover wallpaper glue, my Saratoga glue, and I put it here. Because when you prepare the glue, you shouldn't throw away the leftovers. It's a bit of a flaw that many decorators have when they go to hang wallpaper. When there is a lot of leftover wallpaper paste, it is cheap and gets thrown away. It keeps really well preserved in this jar. Store it in with a brush, or whatever you personally like. I'm going to make sure it sticks properly. Just look how well it's kept. I've had it for many months and it's still perfect. I spread it very carefully and evenly over both of the drawers, and obviously, since I've already applied the first coat of paint with Magic Star, the surface will naturally absorb a bit more of the liquid. So I will go ahead and spread it thoroughly. I then wait for a few moments and then I go over it again because the very first layer of glue will have been partly absorbed by the surface. I add a bit more glue. Also, this particular wallpaper is slightly thick, right, Emma? So it's definitely better to use a little more glue. I carefully take my paper, being very careful with the clamps so they don't pierce or damage it in any way. I line it up right to the very edge here, if at all possible, because I really like having the little butterfly there. Here, we can get the edge just right. So please follow along. Let's go a little bit higher. Okay, over here as well, that's perfect. If you want to let the glue and the paper stick well, you should take a slightly damp microfiber cloth and gently wipe it over the surface. It helps the paper stick better, but not too much because we don't want to make it too damp. Now, with a spatula and a dry cloth in hand, I push out any trapped air bubbles and excess glue from underneath the paper. Here I need to trim off the excess, while over here it's already quite precise. I'm already taking this into account, but since the paper is slightly iridescent, being a champagne color, some imperfections in the structure might show through. But that's part of the charm, the fact that it's not a perfect piece of furniture. I go over it once more with a damp cloth because it increases the sensitivity in my hand, so I can feel if there are any bubbles underneath. Actually, I can't feel anything at all, unless I did something wrong earlier, but we are good. Now, with a sharp, I will remove all of the excess. Perfect. It has been cut well. Afterwards, I will run some sandpaper to make them perfect. I'm not going to separate the drawers now. I'll wait for it to dry thoroughly, then I'll cut, so I avoid tearing the paper. I'll continue with the doors. We were lucky this time because the width of the roll was enough to cover both doors, so we did our calculations and have already cut it. We've already put the glue on as well. Let's pull and go for absolute precision. You know what the real surprise is? The one they're not expecting at home? What? In my opinion, the knobs. Because they were so incredibly ugly before, people didn't really notice them at all. But now that we've given them a thorough clean, because all it took was a simple wash, they're sparkling gems. And on this wallpaper, they'll look stunning. Here you did well to go a bit wider, because these pieces of furniture are never completely perfect, so it's better not to be too precise. With a damp cloth as before, I check if there are any air bubbles underneath. Make sure it sticks well and slightly moisten the paper. This really helps the glue on the paper to be absorbed even better. Look how beautiful it is. It really is lovely. I finish off slightly with the cutter here, where the hinges are. I make sure the paper sticks well here too. Then, of course, when it's completely dry, I'll trim it. Wallpapering is a job that needs to be done properly with patience and precision. So please, don't try to rush it or do a job like this when you're in a hurry. These handles are now real gems, and Emma just cleaned them with baking soda and ammonia. We'd given them a good scrub, and there's also a little trick. This is the original color of the knob, whereas this one was more of an iron color. We applied a touch of Principessa wax, and now it's practically perfect. Here's the old hole from the drawer, and look at this. Beautiful. I also need to put the nail back in, which they'd actually lost at the start. Now it's got its original screw in, and then I'll put the nail in as well. This little nail will help keep the handle nice and secure, so it won't move anymore. A touch of Jasmine Wax will protect everything. Look how beautiful the London Fumé is. Once it's protected, it really comes to life. Just look at how stunning this textured surface I showed you before is, especially once you apply the wax. It's beautiful. I also really like the contrast between this roughness and the paper, which is so romantic and feminine. Lovely. Now I'll make sure everything is well protected, and then I'll show it to you in its setting. Right? This restyling is finished too. Actually, we hadn't planned to do this piece like this at the beginning. It wasn't supposed to have this paper, and it wasn't supposed to have this finish. But I really loved the combination, and I find it extremely romantic. And also, it's got a modern touch, because actually, the base of this paper with the champagne color, I find it truly wonderful and contemporary. I hope you liked it. As always, if you'd like, let me know it in the comments, and remember 2 important things. The products you saw in this tutorial can be found on the elisahome.com website, or from Magic Paint retailers on the magicpaint.it website, divided by region. The retailers on this site are Magic Paint retailers. If not listed, they don't sell Magic Paint, they sell something else. And you won't find Magic Paint on Amazon, and you never will. Goodbye.